Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today on Rosh Chodesh is dedicated to the speeding of beautiful Hashem Ma'av Eliyahu Shlomo Mazal Fortuné, continued health for Rabbanit Chanafar Chana Batzema Fega, loving memory of the victims of terrorism amongst Am Yisrael, also for the safe return of all Am Yisrael held hostage, for the protection of those defending our homeland by the Sayed family, Hazak Baruch. Also sponsored by David E. Ash in honor of you and your unwavering commitment to do good for the state of Israel and for others around you during these challenging times, today and every day. I don't find that yet printed on a cup, so not sure if it counts. Let's get cracking. We want to start by wishing everyone an amazing Chodesh Tov V'Vorach, a month of happiness, a month of Yeshuot, a month of health, of success, and only, Be'ezrat Hashem, only good things. Let's begin. So, there seems to be an interesting machloket. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol nהיה baro. There seems to be an interesting machloket. There's a machloket brought down about when Noach built the teva. Noach, either one opinion says tzohar ta'aseh teva means that he built a window in the teva, and that skylight was what provided light in the teva. Other opinion says he had an even tovah, he had a precious stone that was able to give off a form of bioluminescence, and it brought light into the teva. Okay. The commentators want to know, really, in as many words, who cares? What is this, Home Depot? Like you got to figure out, how did he get the lights on? Was it this? Was it LED? The other shit, Ben Shammai says fluorescent. What's going on here? Why is this argument relevant to me and you, to all of eternity? What are we trying to communicate? So I saw a magnificent understanding, a magnificent pshat. They bring down that this machloket is actually dependent on another machloket. This machloket between Rav and Shmuel is actually coming to tell you something completely different. What's it coming to tell you? In the beginning of the parasha we read, Ele toldot Noach. These are the generations of Noach. Noach ish tzaddik, he was a righteous man. Tamim haya bedorotav. Noach was tamim. He was pure. He was innocent. Tamim means whole, complete, right? Zachar tamim yakrivenu. A lot of different ideas are communicated by the fact that the Torah calls Noach a tzaddik, it calls Noach a tamim. And yet, when the pasuk says, tzaddik tamim haya bedorotav, in his generation, there's a machloket that's brought down, yesh merabotenu shedorshim l'shvach, right? There are some from amongst our rabbis that interpreted this word, that he was a tzaddik in his generation, the shvach, as a form of praise, right? He was a tzaddik in his generation, which is the worst. Could you imagine if he would have had some other friends to be just with him, to be righteous with him? How much more righteous would he have been? And the yesh dorshim l'gnai, and there's some that interpret this as a negative statement, a statement of chastisement, if you will, of a statement saying that Noach was a good guy as compared to Dorotav, a generation of such evil that no one, not even one person, survives this flood other than Noach and his family. So he was a tzaddik in his generation. But if he would have been in the generation of Avraham Avinu, Rashi quotes, Lo haya nechshav leklum. He would not have been considered nechshav leklum to anything. So the question here really hinges on, how do you understand the word bidorotav? He was a tzaddik in his generation. Are we saying he's a tzaddik even in his generation? So in other words, it's an X element of praise, or are we saying he was a tzaddik as compared to his generation? Which means actually that the guy really was no great shakes. Had he been something else, another generation, the guy would not be a tzaddik at all. Huh?
It's not fair to him. He was one at those times. That's what he was got to go by. You can't change him.
So it's not a question of that. The question is, what was the definition of the word bedorotav? Is it coming to tell you A plus, or is it coming to give you A minus. What are we trying to say? Okay? Now, the question I feel, which is really important, is again a very big question. Good, what do we got?
He says it's harder to be a tzaddik during those times than any other time.
So the opinion that says that it's a praiseworthy thing, that's what they're saying. He was a tzaddik in the hardest of times. That's that opinion. The question on the other side is, okay, but was he only judged as a tzaddik based on that very low bar? Which of the two actually is it? Now, my friends, I want to share with you something that I think is really powerful. Because to me, I have one question that always bothered me about this machloket. And there's many answers that we've given over the years for this question. It's only a few Pesukim after this where the Pasuk tells us that Noach was supposed to bring in the tahor animals, the pure animals, and he also brought into the teva animals that were not the kosher or the pure animals. And the Torah says, he brought in the animals that were tahor, and then he brought in also the animals asher eneno tahor, that were not tahor. And the Gemara points out, look, we could have, instead of saying the animals that were pure and the animals that were not the pure ones, we could have said the impure ones. It's less words, it's less letters. But you see the importance of speaking with refined speech. You don't call an animal which is impure, you say, he's not one of the pure ones. You know, today, in today's society, you don't say that someone is crippled, you say that he's disabled. That's asher eneno tehora. He's sight challenged, not blind. Lashon saginaor. So we're learning 3 Pesukim later that you don't speak negatively about people. So my friends, how could it be that for one Pasuk we're like, oh, you know what Bidorotav is? Zing! The guy's a tzaddik, you know, in Sedom, that is tzaddik. But that's what he's saying. This guy, biggest tzaddik on the whole Vegas Strip, Ada. Amazing. Only has 9 girlfriends, this guy. Amazing. What a tzaddik. Right? How could it be that 3 Pesukim after we're worried, one over here we're worried about calling an impure animal impure. And you're telling me that there's an opinion that's going to say that Noach was a relative tzaddik? I saw a beautiful answer. The question over here is not whether Noach was a tzaddik or was not a tzaddik. As the great song goes, Noach is a big tzaddik. You heard that song? It's one of those crossover hits. Right? I think we're saying we have another fire in the toaster. Every Yid's a big tzaddik. Why? Is Noach? The question is Noach a big tzaddik or is Noach a small tzaddik? And let me explain why this is such a powerful and relevant conversation to be having. Torah tells us later on that in the story of Sodom, Lot is saved. And Lot is saved, and not only is Lot saved, who else is saved? His family is saved with him. But why is Lot saved? Is Lot saved because Lot deserves to be saved? Or is Lot saved because of his connection with Abraham? Now, why is that important? Because we find that when Lot is running away, the Malach gives him a very strange command. He says, we're going to take you out, you're going to run, you cannot look behind you. Pen tisafeh bara'ah. Maybe you'll be also punished with the punishment that's happening to the wicked people of Sodom. And indeed what happens? Noach does not look over his shoulder, but Noach's wife, unfortunately, items in the rearview mirror, dead. She looked back, khalas. My friends, since when is looking behind you a punishment that's covered by the death penalty? I don't understand. What? You want to tell me a guy does an avera that's chayav mita? What does he need? Witnesses, court? Don't look behind. Okay, so she did a instant death because she looked behind her. What's the reason for the commandment? What's the reason why when she looked back that happened? My friends, there's something here that's unbelievable. There's a difference between a big tzaddik and a small tzaddik. A big tzaddik has a zechut. And what's the big tzaddik? What's the zechut of the big tzaddik? The zechut of the big tzaddik is that he's able not only to be saved from the Yom Ra'ah, but also to witness the punishment that happens to the Rishayim. And a small tzaddik is able to be saved, but he's not able to witness the punishment of the Rishayim. Now, I understand, so therefore, small tzaddik he gets to be saved, he doesn't get to witness the punishment. Okay, so therefore, fine. So just because you don't get to witness it, you die? Number one. Question number two, that's such a strange thing. Why is that the thing? Why is that what a big tzaddik gets, small tzaddik? Why does anyone really want to be able to see that? But just to finish this point before we answer the question. Therefore, the two questions that I asked you in the beginning of this class are actually connected. Rav and Shmuel that argue, what was the source of light in the Teva? Was it a stone that emitted light, or was it a window to the outside? Are arguing in the same machloket about whether or not Noach was a big tzaddik or a small tzaddik. The opinion that Noach was a small tzaddik held that he could be saved, but he could not see what was going on around him. So therefore, it had to be that his source of light came from something that was within. But the other opinion that says Noach was a big tzaddik, he was a tzaddik even in his generation. They held that he was a big enough tzaddik not only to be saved, but also to have a window to see the punishment that was going on outside. Now this is one of those things that it looks like a very nice present with a bow, very nice, it fits so nicely, lovely chidush. I'm going to ask you the same question for the third time today. Who cares?
It's a matter of, could you mix with the society and stay pure, or if you mix,
You're not mixing with the society. You're out of it already. They're dead. They're being punished. Well, the question is, can I see it or not? What does that have to do with anything? The guy left Sodom already. Listen carefully, because this is very, very important. We have a pasuk that says, Ba'avod Rishaim Rina. That in the destruction of the wicked is Rina. Rina means joy. Gila, Rina, Ditza, Vechedva. So you know that word that you have under the chuppah, that a chatan kala feeling, Rina? You're supposed to have joy when you see the wicked destroyed. On the other hand, we find countless times throughout the Torah that when the wicked are being destroyed, it's not a happy time. Where do we find an example of that? The Egyptians are being drowned. The Egyptians are being drowned. And the Jewish people are saying Shira, and the angels want to sing Shira, and God says, Ma'aseh Yadai Toba'im Bayam, my creations are drowning in the sea. V'atem omrim Shira, and you want to say Shira, you want to sing now? So which is it? Is it a happy time, or is God telling me not to sing? Is it something which we're supposed to, you should not rejoice in the fall of your enemies? Or is it ba'avod rishayim rina? Which is it? So again, there's many different approaches. One approach says, Binfol oivecha al tismach means it's your personal enemy. The pasuk doesn't say that your oyev is a rasha. So therefore, your personal enemy falls. Your direct competition loses their business. Now you're in a good place. Don't rejoice that they fell. You know, Hashem could have given you your parnasah without the guy falling, without the guy going bankrupt. So Binfol oivecha, maybe it doesn't mean a rasha. Simple answer. But there's many much more complicated layered answers. My friends, I want to share with you something I think is unbelievable. And it's something that's unfolding in front of our eyes. You're looking around and you're seeing something in our world today which is astonishing. A world which is ostensibly so concerned. I just want to point one thing out. You know, this country ground to a halt when George Floyd had someone lean on his neck to the point that he died. One person died with a show of excess force, and the whole country shut down. But when 1,300 people are brutally murdered in the most horrific ways possible, we're already in a position, in a place where thousands of people, not only in Arab countries, tens of thousands of people, are protesting against Israel. How is that possible? Now, there are those that were protesting even before Israel responded. The morning after, there were protests here in New York, before anything had been done by Israel. So those people that are telling you it's because of the disproportionate response of Israel, there was already protests before there was a response. But listen carefully. That's that group of people. Now you have much more widespread. Why? Because there is a tendency that when a person sees something be destroyed, that when something becomes the underdog, that people support the underdog. So now that they're bashing Gaza to bits, the parts that Hamas was in, if they're telling them to leave, all of a sudden, now everybody's feeling. That's why it's so important for the Israeli army to strike quickly and decisively. The longer it goes on, the more you give chance for public opinion to sway further and further and further and further from what has actually happened over here. My friends, listen carefully. A Tzaddik Gadol could see the Rasha get punished, could see the Rasha get everything coming to him. But he's so firm in his own conviction that what the Rasha is getting when he gets his just recompense does not change his opinion about what's right and what's wrong. Does not move his understanding of where his solidarity should lie. And then when that person is getting what has to happen, because they're hiding in tunnels, what do you want us to do? How do you want us to fight them? They're not standing out in the open. For all their bravery, they're hiding underneath the ground like the biggest cowards. What did they do? They took women and children. Hazaku Baruch, big strong man. Warriors, lions of Gaza. My friends, you understand. But what happens? It is the tendency of the world to go that way. And suddenly, you have people who are saying the craziest things about things that anyone in the world would have stood with Israel for, and is now no longer standing with them. So the Pasuk tells us, I don't really want you to be so happy when someone is destroyed. But there's a terrible risk if you don't remember that it is a wonderful thing that a murderer stops being able to murder. So therefore, we need to walk a tightrope of al tismach and as well rina. The mini tzaddik, he can't look back. And what happened? In the minute that Lot's wife looked back and she saw the wicked people of Sodom being destroyed, what did she feel in that minute? She felt bad for them. She sided with them. She was on whose side? Their side. So immediately God says, you're with them? No problem. Whatever they're getting, you get. Fadal. Sorry? I'm not sure there's a feminine for a block of salt. My friends, in that moment, we witness the power of the machloket over here. The Gemara is not asking a question in order to try and knock Noach, not knock Noach. It's trying to set up a conversation for how a person who's not 1,000,000,000% entrenched in his own values understands how to be able to interact with the society around him. And how dangerous it is when you're not so entrenched in your own values, not so committed, not so religious, not so fanatic, that you start to wonder, and you start to drift, and you start to doubt, and you start to question. That, my friends, is the question of whether Noach could be allowed to have a window or not. Noach could have looked out the window and said, look, they were Rishayim, but God, I kind of feel like this storm is already a disproportionate response. Are you hearing it now? My friends, so I'll ask that question now in perhaps a little bit of a different way. We, Baruch Hashem, we're very blessed, we're lucky to be able to live in a Malchut Shel Chesed, in a kingdom of kindness. It's how they term the United States of America. We're blessed to be able to live in a place where at least legally our rights are enshrined in the Constitution. We're supposed to and meant to be protected by the state, by the government of the places in which we live in this great country. And even though there are people walking the streets talking about how they're happy when they found out, Samachti be'omrim li, when they found out about the atrocities, and these people are allowed to have microphones and megaphones walking on the streets of this country, inciting, glorifying the most vicious acts of brutality. And that's okay, because we're Jewish. I could promise you, if I took a megaphone and started talking or glorifying acts of barbaric murder against people who were gay, or against people who were black, or against people who were Hispanic, right? What would happen? I would be in jail without bail. But there's a different rule sometimes for Jews. My friends, even with all of that, is there a country you'd rather be other than our own? Outside of Eretz Israel, is there another country on earth that you'd rather be in than America? America is at least Tzaddik haya b'dorotav. I'm very either. I'm I have tremendous hakarat atov to this country, but my friends, living in the Medina Shel Chesed comes with a specific risk, and the risk of that is, my friends, do you get to look out the window? Are you strong enough in your tzaddikness to be able to maintain your own understanding and your own values when the values outside are very, very different? Big conversation that's happening now in modern Orthodoxy, by the way. For many, many years, they would call themselves proudly modern Orthodox, but now the leaders of the movement are asking whether they should change the order to Orthodox modern. Because there was a time when the one could come before the other. It's a big conversation now in modern Orthodoxy. Now, the question is not about the label. Labels are unimportant. But we are already seeing a massive shift in this mainstream part of Orthodoxy in America. I mean, when Flatbush Yeshiva has decided that it no longer wants to send its children to Ivy League colleges, that is a Orthodox modern conversation as opposed to a modern Orthodox conversation. When we know that deans and student presidents on these college campuses are coming out and saying full-throated support of Hamas, when this is what we are seeing, then parents and children are saying, is this the place for me to be? My friends, but let's not make this mistake. The Achdut of Am Yisrael here happened after a disaster. This security mission of rooting out Hamas happened after the most cataclysmic problem and tragedy. But why do we wait for tragedies to happen to respond to them? Why don't we preempt those tragedies? My friends, the world around us, even locally, it's a beautiful, kind place as opposed to places that we have been for the duration of our galut. But there is a danger to our children, a danger to our existence that really only can be combated by being a tzaddik gadol. So much so that you don't identify with what's going on out there, and you understand that my position, this position, is really where I want to be, but more importantly, where I want my children and my children's children to be. So my friends, and Joe's going to like this, one opinion says that the light in the Teva came from having a precious stone. I'd like to suggest, Joe, that if you had in the teva, if you had a window, you didn't need the stone. And if you had the stone, you didn't need the window. But I'd like to suggest that in our times, if you have a window, you sure as hell better get yourself a stone. The Torah is compared to precious stones, diamonds, because they reflect this beautiful godly light. I'm not telling you to have a television in your home. I don't think you should. But if you do, you better double, triple down on how many Sfarim you have in your home. If you have a window that faces the street, if your kids are going to go to university and to college, which so many of our children are, that doesn't mean that they need less Jewish education. That means that they need 10 times more Jewish education. People are telling me, Rabbi, I'm not sure if my son's going to go to yeshiva in Eretz Israel. Why? Because he's going to college. I was like, if he's going to college, that's a reason for him to go not for 1 year, but for 2 years. If he's getting a window, he better get himself a stone. Because you can't. It's too hard. It's too hard. And you think we're so quick to say Lot is a wicked guy. He's this. Lot's a guy who risked his life for Haknasat Orchim. If he was alive today, we would give him a hesped like you can't believe it. He would be one of the tzaddikim. We'd be talking about him in such glowing terms. And yet he was a tzaddik katan. My friends, I think maybe that's what Rambam means when he says, quoting the Gemara, that a person should never see themselves as a tzaddik. They should see themselves as a benoni. Chetziav zakai, chetziav chayav, I'm half mitzvot, I'm half averot. The Gemara says, if he does one more mitzvah, he will be zakai. He will be, right, he'll get tzaddik. He does one more avon, he will be hayav. He won't get punished. I think maybe the Gemara means more than that. It's not just that one more mitzvah is going to make you, in the Sachar column, in the Book of Life column, one more mitzvah makes you pure, zakai, zaka ubara. One more avera makes you hayav. We're so close to tilting that sometimes our identity is so precarious that's how careful we have to be with its calibration. If you see yourself that way, then you know that you'll always be investing. If you see yourself as having a lot of zechut in the bank, you think you have a few to give. My father tells a story, and I'll end with this. This guy calls him up and he says, Rabbi, I don't know what to do. I drank this drink and I don't think it was kosher. I found out afterwards it's not kosher. I don't know what to do. I already have it in me. I already drank it. What should I do? My father says, nothing to do now. What you do? Stick your finger down your throat. Right? You ready? He said, but maybe to counteract drinking something that's not kosher, maybe what you could do is we have a bulletin that we put out that tells people about kashrut, sponsor the bulletin, and then you brought kashrut to more people. So that's a tikkun in the area of kashrut. So the guy says, okay, I'm going to do it. My father says, he says, how much is the bulletin? My father says, 500. The guy says, Rabbi, I'm going to donate 800. My father said, why? You planning on taking another sip? Are you with me? Are you with me? How much does it take? How much does it take to tip, to change the way we think and the way we identify in this world? A person sometimes thinks, it's not a big deal, and then they make mistakes. But if you have a lot of zechut in the bank, what do you think? Oh, I just got 500 people to keep kosher. Fadal, another sip. You understand? There's an end to that story, but I don't want to share it today because I want to leave you with this. Hashem should bless us all to be able to be tzaddik gadol, to be a tzaddik in the hardest and in the easiest of generations. Bezrat Hashem. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.